Okay, last question from Kimber. You and I have talked a lot about writing. Oh my God, we have epic conversations about writing. It's so fun. Have you decided how long your rotational? I can't read. How did you decide how long your rotational story would be? Was there a strategy behind setting up the rotation? I'm curious because I've never done one. Um, I didn't decide the story was going to be 3 years long. Actually, it's almost 3 years to the day. Today is May 25th. Wow. Anyway, yeah, I didn't decide how long the story was going to be. Um, Rotational stories. This was okay. This I'm just going to explain my whole process for when I started the story. So, I had read a few rotational stories, and when I say a few, I mean like a few, like no more than three. Um, and what I noticed about them is that they are extremely open-ended stories. I mean, they don't end. Like there's no medium for a rotation story to end. And for those of you who have been with me from the beginning, you know I am a huge fan of starting a story and finishing it. Like I can't fathom a story that never ends. That is just not what I want to do with my life. It's not realistic. It's not sustainable, at least for me. I do have other things I would like to do with my life. And writing one story forever is just not it. Um, Sorry, I had to go cough. Yeah, I don't want to write a story forever. I know the nature of sim lit tends to go that way because um, if you're someone who cares about being popular or whatever, um, in order to keep yourself relevant in the community, you kind of have to keep your story going, or else people will forget about you. I don't care about that. I write the stories because it's fun to me. I enjoy them, and I want you guys to enjoy them. And when you stop enjoying them, okay, that's perfectly fine with me. um, so yeah, that was my thought process about the story going on forever. I never wanted that. Um, but I did understand the nature of rotation stories is very open ended. So when I didn't always have an ending to this story, actually. Um, I decided that whenever I wanted to be done with the story, I had a particular scenario that I could invoke at any time to get myself out. So I figured an appropriate ending to the story at the time. This was before, anyway, I figured the story should probably end with Eliza kind of giving up and moving out of the neighborhood. So I figured at that point when I wanted to be done, I would have like Mary kind of challenge Eliza on the HOA and like what the rules are and what her role is, and like really kind of get everyone behind it. It's like, yeah, why do we have these meetings and why are you the president and how come no one else, just everyone kind of coming at Eliza. And, Eliza and all her pride, would just kind of quit and leave the neighborhood. But so yeah, for a long time that was going to be my exit strategy. But after a while, I was thinking about it and I'm like, okay, true, Eliza is like one of the most popular characters in this story, and at times we tend to think of her as the main character, but she's not. I mean, the story is keeping up with the Joneses. The Joneses are the focus of the story. Everything doesn't revolve around the Joneses, but everything always ends up getting back to the Joneses in a way. So I was like, the story can't end with the pancakes rotation. That's just not how things should end. So so that's kind of how I started thinking differently about the end of the story. So I'm like, okay, well, how does it end with the Joneses? Like, what happens with the Joneses? Um, that's going to be, so monumental that the story has to end here. At the time, Reed did not exist in the story at all. Reed didn't come into the picture, at least in my mind. Reed wasn't a thought until shoot. Uh, I didn't start thinking about a Reed type character until after they got divorced. Actually, um, I was thinking about Mary, and I was like, this woman. Okay, true, she's done wrong things, but she's just too perfect. Like, there's no skeletons in her closet, like none. I just didn't believe that. I mean, um, everyone has something. I mean, it doesn't have to be like high drama, but everyone has a past. And I mean, true, her past is terrible. Like, her mother died when she was a baby. Her father was terrible. And, she grew up in this household that didn't have a whole lot of love. And, she, her story alone is very compelling and makes you go, oh. But I just couldn't believe that that was all she was about, you know? Um, I don't recall exactly how I came to the conclusion that there needed to be another man in her life, but however that happened, I decided that there had to be another guy um, to kind of figure her out. So that's how the person that we now know as Reed came to be. Anyway, so when this Reed person, this other man, came into the picture, I knew that she and him had to find their way back to each other, and the story had to end with Mary. Well, first of all, she had to change. I mean, that was like the major part of the rest of the story, was seeing Mary change and adapt to her new life, and how she just kind of gets on. Um, I didn't always know the story was going to end with them getting married, but when I decided that, I was like, oh, this is perfect. So, so yeah, even from then, when I decided what the ending was going to be, I didn't know when the story was going to end, because I mean, like, me, like, things have to happen in the right time. And like, I don't like to rush. I don't think I'm terribly good at pacing all the time, but like, I like to try and pace things appropriately. So I couldn't invoke that situation right then because Mary wasn't ready yet, so I had to wait a little while to bring Reed into the picture. um so yeah, I didn't plan the length of the story. I mean, the storytelling dictated how long it was, and when I felt it was appropriate to bring things about to a close, that's what I did. So I even like this year, like in January, I was trying to like decide, not decide, like I was trying to predict when the story would end. I'm like, oh yeah, this could be done by March. And March came, it's like, okay, this could be done by April, and now it's May, almost June. So I didn't plan the length of this story. What was the strategy behind setting up the rotation? So another thing I noticed about rotation stories, and I'm not saying this about all rotations, I'm just saying in my experience with reading them, this is what I experienced. Rotation stories tend to not have structure. And you know me, I gotta have all the structure. Like, all my stories have to have a point. Like, there's only been one story that I started writing that did not have a point. The Wonder Kingdom. that was just my let's have fun with this and just write and be with these characters that I love so much and see what happens. I did not have a point with that story. The only thing I wanted to happen in that story was I wanted them to open up the art gallery, and they did. Other than that, I didn't plan anything, and it was fun. It was fun, but um, I can't do that long term. Eventually I'm going to lose interest, or it's just going to get so crazy I don't know what to do with it. So I have to have structure in my stories. And so, all the families needed to have a story that guided, the rotations. And also about not having structure, I noticed in rotations, a lot of times the households aren't related. So it's just like it's literally like different stories, all these buckets in one story that they don't necessarily connect. Sorry. And I can't have that. There has to be a point. People have to be related to each other. Otherwise, why are they in the story? So I wanted to have something to link them all together. So that's how I decided to have them all in one literal neighborhood in the game. They all live on the same street. So that way they would see each other. Their kids would go to school together. I know all the kids go to the same school, but I just can't deal with that in my head. I mean, this story is probably one of the most Simish stories I've written. And, so they live very Sim lives, but there are certain concepts in the Sims that I just can't, as a human, I just can't wrap my head around. And, yeah. Anyway, so, I had to adapt certain things to make it make sense to me. But yeah, so like I wanted them to be around each other and be a part of each other's lives. So, but it's the Sims, and they pretty much live autonomous lives, and it's not guaranteed that they're actually going to visit each other's houses and stuff. So I had to create a way to make sure that at least every now and then they got together. So that's why I created the homeowners association, and they had these meetings at Eliza's house. So if we never saw them all together, or at least in small groups, at least they had this HOA meeting that they could go to, and then in their own rotations they can talk about in reference to the other characters and stuff. Yeah, so that's why the neighborhood is set up like it is. That's why we have the neighborhood rotation. That's why they all live in the same neighborhood, because I wanted them to be together and be related. So they can have something to gossip about. You know what I mean? Strategy behind. I decided that a rotation should be one sim week. So from Sunday to Saturday at midnight, or, Saturday night-ish, just before the sun comes up on Sunday. Yeah, because, I can't have chaos. I have to have structure. So there needs to be a beginning and end for me, so I know what's coming and I know what I need to do. Are there any other strategies behind the rotation? Initially, my thought was that every week, everyone in the house should go to a public lot together, and just to leave them autonomous to see what they do and see how that can shake up the story. So that happened with, it was hard to do with the Townie house, Lester and Cornelius, Lester and India Cornelius, because there's only two of them. And one's a teen, one's an adult. The adult works at night. So it was very hard to get them together anyway. So that's why I decided to have those two join clubs. So I could at least, when I'm with them, I could have them off doing something. So I had those two people join clubs, and most of the time I had them be autonomous there so I can just see what they get up to. Um, with the pancakes, it was kind of the same situation. You know, Bob works at night. Uh, Eliza, well, her job is an active career, so that was fun. Going to work with her, so I could never get Bob and Eliza together, so that was difficult. And then they had Brienne, so I had them go out to that water park that one time, but they were pretty much autonomous. Like I had to, you know, control them because autonomy isn't really that great sometimes in The Sims 4. But and then same thing with the Pruitts. You know, Asia. Well, we started out with Asia, Jared, and Colby. Asia worked at night. Jared worked very early in the morning. You know, so it was hard to get all the people in the house all together. The only time I ever successfully did that was with the Joneses when they went to the movies that time. That was the only time I was ever actually able to get everyone out and just leave them. So I kind of abandoned that rule. So because it just wasn't something I could do without feeling forced. You know, because I don't like the forced stuff. I don't like to make stuff fit into the story. So um, that's all of Kimber's questions. Thank you so much for submitting them and being my friend and listening to all the tea. Watching me spill all the tea on you.